if you feel like asking questions in between,
please do so.
Do so.
It will be much better for the atmosphere. So, hi, my name is Georgia Sagri. As Sophia very nicely remarked, I'm from Athens. I was born in Athens, and I've been the past 10 years moving from Athens to New York, trying to establish a practice that involves two, let's say, different types of empires. Athens, let's say, is like an old, or part of an old empire. And New York is coming to be also part of an old empire. So that was the reason that I was very interested to be in parallel to these cities, because the one is signifying the end of something to be known as the ancient empire and what that carries, and I will say a little bit about what that means. And New York, it is the contemporary end of an empire. So I was very interested of this kind of parallel cities, and this is what's the reason that brought me to be traveling from one point to the other, trying to figure out myself between these two places. I'm going to show some of my work, and I'm going to try to establish a certain think process with you in regard and in parallel to a search, a path that's been started long ago in my work, and slowly became more and more aware to me, which has to do with a very particular philosophical path that is called cynicism, or the school of cynics. And I'm going to talk through the work the very, very fact of a misunderstanding, and also an understanding of what the cynics or the school of cynics is, and how you can find this, or let's say how I'm trying to find this in my work. There are many things that you can see in the work, but I'm going to today talk about that in particular, because this is something that I'm also very interested right now in my work, and also what I'm thinking and what I'm researching. So I'm going to start with a recent piece, and it's called Sunday Stroll. And Sunday Stroll is an installation, but also within the installation, within the particles, the elements of the installation, which was presented at the Sculpture Center this year and in New York. There was also a performance piece which was called Sunday Stroll Undone and Redone. I'm going to play a little bit of the video, and while I'm going to play the video, I'm going to also sometimes stop, talk. This is the ghost of the building. This is going to be like our company for the rest of the talk. And I'm going to start talking a little bit about some particular elements of the piece, and then I'm going to talk in general about some of my thoughts regarding the piece, but also continuously talking about the philosophical stream of the School of Cynics.
When a cat meows, a governor when a cat meows, a governor.
So as you can see, I'm picking up a paper, which the paper has a poem that was constructed through going on particular photos that I have been seeing in the process of making the piece, which is called Sunday Stroll. And with the process of like searching or like picking up Sunday news and picking up photos of the Sunday news and basically through like me being kind of influenced through this news, created a passage or a script or a poem and animating those news in a different way, with a different language, with a different type of approach, those news.
Orders, shootings. When a cat meows, a governor orders shootings. When a cat meows, a governor orders shootings. A governor.
And this is where the installation, the interior of the installation of my piece is, where I enter to basically activate the photos that I've been collecting, and they've been projected in overhead projectors, and they are also the score of the performance. So the installation is not only an installation that is activated through the movement of the viewers and through the processing of the objects and through the placement of the objects, but also it's a way for me to redo those news, to basically activate them again as a score, as a notation for me, and to do the performance, to be able to do again these movements of these news, and very pointing out very particular details of these photos, to bring them in space, and to be able to show something that it can be so distant in the here and now, which is very important for this particular piece, because it's a piece that, although it seems from the installation that it regards a space of knowledge, a space of information, a space that is a history space, it's actually presenting current news that when they are projected, they look like historical documents, historical facts, although they are not historical facts, they are just news from the past week. And when they are presented as performance, then again another time is created, because the performance is bringing those movements, these events, into the presence, but in order to create empathy, in order to actually be there for the viewers, this very fact of these very particular subjects doing certain things. And for me it was very important to bring that in space, and for the spectators to be in certain moments actual participants of those news, actual participants of these moments of history.
Shootings. When a cat meows, a governor orders shootings. When a cat meows, a governor governor a 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 governor shootings, a governor,
As you can see during the performance, there are these kind of gestures, because the point is like to actually animate the very fact that the governor is not this body, but it's this movement, and this is the movement that is the governor. So for me, it's very important during the performance and during the very particular passages to actually again be signifying this kind of disembodiment of like very fact of being this composition. That I'm doing these particular movements not because the performance is actual, like, you know, it's not a linear piece, but is really trying to compose this very moment that those news are tracking around, and you're basically grasp very specific fragments and you try to make sense. You're really trying to understand what is your position into this. So if you really want to understand the governor, you really need to see certain types of movements which might be the governor, which might be that he's fucking cleaning his shoe on the back of his pants, or he's like standing like this, or he's ordering, or he's like picking up a phone, and he's like, you know, all of these things, they might be the governor. And the thing is that if you don't do this, you cannot even understand how it feels for you, that word or that notion of governor. So it's very important that from this kind of image, we go to another image, which is a detail of that image. So this is the cat. So all of these are happening at the same time. Don't forget that, because while we are talking here, there's other things going on. A child cries. A governor. A governor. A governor. Orders, switching, a child cries. The cat, the governor, the detail. The shooting. A child cries. So in a way, the space of the space where the composition is and the space where the production is slowly is sort of connected, and it's not clear anymore which is the space of the notation and which is the space of the making. And this is very, very important, especially when this is an exhibition which is also a group exhibition, and it's expected that the installation contains all the very facts of the presentation and the production and the notation. And what is very interesting is with the sound is sort of not anymore define what is mine and what is others and what is for the installation and what is for the viewer and what is for my own sake and what is for the sake of the actual making of the cry of the baby. So this is very important for this.
It's your baby.
It's a baby. So this performance was about 1 hour and around 2 hours. Yeah, 1 hour and a half.
By you?
Yes, yes.
The other one is just part of
the other one is the exhibition space. So the movements are not for the sake of the movement, but it's for the sake of the making of the sound and for the sake of actualizing the very facts of the sounding of these movements and make them appear. For making of the appear of the sounding is not just making the sound, but actualizing what kind of form is making that sound, what kind of body is making that sound, what kind of thing is that is making the sound. It's not just like making the sound. And it's quite interesting because it is not clear sometimes when we hear something crying, we don't really make sure. We think that we have a clear image of that, but when you try to bring that image up and at the same time make the sound of it, you are kind of close to it. You are kind of going closer to it. And there are many other ways that you can do the crying. This is a 7-hour piece. It's called the Antigone model. It was presented at the Kunstwerke in 2013. And this could be the grief of Antigone. When she sees her brother dead, So the sound is pre-recorded while the performance is happening. Different ways of crying are recorded, and the figure is made while the sounding is taking place, as well as the details of the grief. Because the grief is a different sound from the last breath of a dead body. How is that body moving when it's falling down and it's the last breath of the brother of Antigone? How is to fall down killed? How does the sound is? So the Antigone model, in a way, it's 7 hours because there are all of these details worked again and again and again and again to go closer to the grief, to go closer to the crying of Antigone, to go closer to the laughing. Because when Creon is confronting Antigone, or when the sister war is about Antigone, there are certain movements that the sister is doing because she's worried. She's moving, she's looking, she's searching. So what are the details of these subjects? What is making them to be the Antigone? What is making them to be Creon is not just a decision of their, logical decisions, but their experiences. There are their organisms moving certain way, making those decisions. What is the space between the physical decision and the emotional decision? What is the physical and the emotional? So the grief can be many different movements. Because for Antigone to go against certain laws, the grief is very important. And it sounds in a certain way. There is a saying that in Greece there is a saying that there are women hired to actually cry for someone that is dead, and this is a very respectful profession, let's say, to go and grieve for someone, to go and cry for someone, for a dead. So that moment of being in a position to cry even for someone that you don't know, what it acquires a certain understanding of the sounding of the grief. Or let's say the grief comes from comes from somewhere that needs to be placed in certain bodies to be able to cry for the dead. So if we are not able to operate those movements, and you will see that some of them, maybe you haven't seen, but some of them, they're hitting themselves, so they're able to start functioning as this instrument of griefs. So they're able to cry. Otherwise, they cannot cry, because maybe this body is not a body of someone that they know to grieve. But they still need to cry, because if you don't cry for someone, it's just, it doesn't even exist, So the Antigone is killed, is prisoned because he wanted to grieve, because her brother shouldn't exist, which is very, very important. And for me, in the Antigone model piece, it was very important to point this out. And many others in the space of the story. And those pieces, the metal pieces, are functioning as placeholders where they're moving in during the performance. And there are gersors, there are sculptures, and there are gersors as documents, like move as text, basically creating space of context. So they're like sometimes close to each other, sometimes opening up, sometimes are used in order to be lifted and like make also sound. And the plateau of the performance is always a plateau that is in and onto the text. So it's more like a document that I'm working on, like a constant document where I'm moving around and I'm figuring out all of these details of these figures, of this story, of this myth, of this play, of these subjects.
And do you follow a script, or is it?
There are elements that there are worked on, and also during the performance, because also some of the performances are long enough to develop these elements. So, you know, if you have the cry, I can record the cry, and then I can work on it while the performance is going on. And then I can record again, and then I can repeat, and then I can repeat. And this is part of the way that the performance is happening. But in the sense of the going to the idea of the School of the Cynics, it's something very important to understand that. If I would say that I'm a student of the School of the Cynics, it's very important for this school that the action is creating theory. It's not the theory that is creating action. It's a parallel, basically, stream. So within the action, within the doing, within the parameters of the doing, there is also a certain development of, let's say, the school. The School of Cynics, it's a school that is peripatic. So it's walking. So even the very fact that I'm sitting right now, you know, is not part of the rules of the school. So I should actually be standing and walking and like, you know, because already like by sitting on a chair signifies a certain hierarchy or a certain position. So if I want to explain to you the practice is by constantly figuring out figuring out not for the sake of figuring out, but for the sake of truth, for the sake of ethics, for the sake of understanding, for the sake of good, for the sake of love, for the sake of friendship, for the sake of equality.
Can I ask you a question about the clothes? Is also like it's
The
also-
cloth is always a problem because actually all of the performances should be naked. The cloth is a huge problem, and it's not because I have a problem with clothing, it's just that I'm not sure if these performances are like of the planet, of the condition of vulnerability. It needs to be more vulnerable. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense.
But what keeps you from making them naked? Are like institutional reasons or your decision or?
Look, one of the reasons, for example, that I decide sometimes to actually wear something is because I have this body, and this body is very particularly charged with certain, like female body, okay? The female body is charged. To uncharge the female body, at the same time you want to uncharge the whole issue of gender, it's a huge, you cannot do everything.
Yeah, sure.
You know, you need to do step by step. So by even, trying in a 7-hour performance to do Antigone, to do the horse, to do Creon, and to do the leaf falling down, because I don't want to be only a woman. I want to be all of these things. I want to be the leaf, and I want to be the horse, and I want to... So in order to do all of this, and also carry this body,
You need the clothes.
you need some kind of clothing, because the issue is not about the humans, of course. Antigone was not kept in prison because of she was a bad human. She was undermining the laws of human and the laws of nature. That's why she was in prison. Because she wasn't supposed to be this thing that she wanted to be, so that's why she kept in prison. Because to be in this kind of like limbo between want to be this body during the performance, but at the same time to be doing all of these other things. So this is a bit but of course,
I mean, if you ask me,
of course, certainly we know that the female body is such a symbolic, historic, political charge point, which I'm very happy that I have this body, because it makes it even more difficult. And when it's more difficult, it is making it to be more in the sense of the school, the school of cynics. Because in the school of cynics, as far as we know, everyone could participate. The dogs, the beggars, the prostitutes, the women, the slaves. Because when the school is peripatic, it takes with it many different things. It's not only the women, it's not only the repressed, it's not only, but okay, you know, you can pass through the Academy of Aristotle and you can go through the other door, you know, and you can take with you other students, and then you can continue with another school, and, you know, so this is very important to understand, but also in the sense of in the sense of the reason that the performance doesn't look ever that it starts and it finishes is exactly because of that. Because it's one fragment of this walk, of this doing. Of course, there are points of view, like there are fragments. Each fragment has its own autonomous importance, but I don't see them as I don't see them part of like a, you know, now it was this and then I was like that, and you know, it's continuous. So we are in front of the gates of the school, the Polytechnic in Athens, and we are at the commemoration of the overthrow of the dictatorship in 1973-74 by the students, and this is the commemoration of 17th of November 1999. I am quite young. I'm on the second year of the School of Fine Arts, and I decided to do a public performance in front of, opposite to that gate that was turned down by the tanks, and many students were killed that night that the tanks of the dictatorship passed through the door of the Polytechnic. And I decided to do this performance in public during the commemoration of the 17th of November. So all of the different political parties, they go in front of the gate, they give flowers, they put their flags. All the representatives of the political parties go there to sort of say that no, we were the ones that we were at the Polytechnic, and we, no, we were the ones that were. I was there, you were, you know, and.
But not all of them.
Not
like
all of them.
The socialist
The
parties,
socialists, the leftists,
but not
yes.
like the conservative ones.
Yes, the conservatives, they don't care anyway. So yeah, the left ones, they just like try to say who is, you know, who is the one that is basically the representative of that night that overthrown the dictatorship. And And as sort of like a and you hear the voices on the background. It's the beginning of the demonstration for the commemoration of the 17th of November, which is one of the biggest demonstrations that happen every year in memory of the student movement that was occupied the university, taken the university, and because of them, the junta was overthrown. And as a student in the School of Fine Arts, I decided to basically confront the gate, but without having anything to do with any representation, just as standing in front of the gate.
Why did you use the glass box?
Because a day like that, I thought that basically is like basically I thought that a subject in front of history without representation becomes another historical factor. And I thought that the glass would be the most simple way to do that, to signify that. Basically, I wanted to be history, in front of history. This body, like this kind of subject in front of history, realizing itself as be the history in presence. So. And when you want to really, really change, you really need to change the way you talk, the way you write, the way you move. And this is a very strange desktop of sand that I'm trying to find different type of language. And I'm writing these letters and I'm making these sounds and I'm trying to figure out a new language. And this is at the Ford. And the feedback that you hear is because the whole performance, the whole making of this was also filmed and it was live streamed. And I had a small computer that was screening this performance while it was live streamed. So basically it was creating this kind of canon while I was performing. So it was like a strange, unsynchronized concert, let's say, or and while I was making the letters and the text and the sound of this alphabet, I was also making a sound of this alphabet, and also I was trying to figure out the certain movements that the subject that is making the sounds and this alphabet is doing. So what is picking this subject? Is it picking like, you know, like something from the floor? Is moving like this because I'm trying to find a different way of like walking? But you would say that let's say that this is an endless investigation. But, and you would say that, oh, you know, what, you know, what's going on? Like, you know, it seems like kind of, you know, what you're trying to do here? What you're looking for? What's happening? Certainly, it's quite easier to be acquiring ourselves into the school of imitating reality. But as I said before, because I'm from another school, I'm not interested of imitating reality. I'm interested of making it. So it's a very, very different school. There are different schools. So because that's a philosophical school, the cynics are not really interested of imitating, but they're actually through the practice and through the processes of living, they are able to sift and make reality. And this is the difference between a school of representations and a school of presentations. And this is what I wanted to say tonight. Thank you very much. And we can make questions.
I would like to pick up on the last thing you said.
Can we turn on the lights so we can see each other?
Yeah, let's have daylight.
Yeah. Nice.
Turn it off. I was wondering, like, within the performance, when like at what point does like the evocation turn into an embodiment, and like at what point does imitation and artificiality turn into a reality and into an embodiment. So at what point does the evocation of the cat and the evocation of the governor and the evocation of the grief, like at what point does it start to become something real? And does this also affect the audience? Like, is the audience also affected by your grief or not? Or like, how do you relate to this equality that you're talking about? Because also I was wondering, like, how to make reality. Like, isn't reality always already there? And isn't imitation, like, isn't the difference between representation and presentation, like, always kind of like, they're kind of like on the same horizontal plane. There's a reality that's always already there, and I wonder, like, how you can be the maker of this thing.
The maker of reality?
Yes, it's kind of two different questions.
Yeah, for the first question, it has to do with the need and the drive to actually do the grief. If you don't want to do it, if you want to imitate the grief, you are on the parameter of performing. But if you want to be the grief, to do the grief, to be grieving, you are doing a performance.
How does that function for you? Like, how do you believe that then that the body is capable of?
Yeah, the body is capable of evoking. Yes.
Like,
yeah.
In a way, it's an artificial.
Yeah, that's why I was saying that basically it's deriving from the sound. It's not deriving from the movement and from the representation of the grief. First comes the sound, the sounding of it, and then comes the representation or the presentation.
But is it
Because the crying comes from different parts of the body. It's not only here. It's not here that makes us cry. It's not here that makes us smile. It's not here. There are so many different things that they operate in order for us to actually say that we laugh or we cry. But if you want to operate crying and you operate smile, you don't think smile, you do smile. So this is, and I mean, of course, this comes from observation. Like, I mean, I can also, like, I could do another, because I'm really sorry that because I had like a whole section on the talk on, like, the process. And because really, like, seriously, I had no idea when I started doing performance that for me it was not important how it looks, but how it sounds. It took me a while to understand that. Meaning that it looks a certain way, but if I don't have the sounding of it, if I'm not the instrument making this also, I cannot really understand how it is. I don't really, it's a different function, let's say. Because there is a certain tradition that is coming from particularly from a certain understanding of the mastering, like the art as a master of the visual arts, which on the part of the music is really taken by the composer. And when you're doing performance, you are able to break apart these figures of the composer and the player. Because you are the instrument and you are the composer. But you are not a master. Because while you're composing, you're also playing. So this is a very, very funny figure that you take in at this point. And this is very interesting to me, because he asked also about if there is a score and all of this. Of course, there is score, but the score is not a score of someone that have made certain decisions for someone else to play, but the certain decisions of someone that is going to execute while also listening. So it's more on the parameters of free jazz than classical music. But you really need to be a good player. In a way, you understand what I mean. You need to want to cry. If you don't want to cry, you cannot cry. You understand what I mean. And in order for this to happen, is also that I need to listen to a lot of different cries in documents and stuff. And I need to see films, and I need to see stuff, and then I will know that it's like, some people do like, because they don't want to cry, and they're like, they're holding it back, and stuff like that. Or like people smile like half smile, and they're doing like, again, things like that. All of these are very interesting stuff, And those things can put us in a way that the singular is then, sort of expansive, because it is becoming again like a note, a notation that someone can actually see like, oh, start feeling like weird because you said about the viewers, Suddenly everybody starts to like, sort of like, feel a little bit like, myself including, that it's not an execution. It's not execution. Is also viewing and listening this while it's played. That's why I'm putting it more in the free jazz, because in the free jazz you have climates, you have like, you need to practice the scores, you need to play, and some performances are some performances are that they're not shown in this presentation. There are many performances that have not been recorded. There are many performances that they happen like one by one viewer. There are many performances that they happen because I just have a tendency to like look at details of certain things and like, try them out. But these are more luggages, like it's a luggage that you sort of create, and then for a certain piece, you select. You say, Antigone, is meaning, she's scared. Ooh, what is going to happen? So like all of this, you have worked it out many times, and then in the performance, in the specific piece, you select this element, and you say, okay, cry, grief, this. You have a list, It's a list of things, and then you put them together. You work them out. You compose. Yeah, and embodiment, of course, exists embodiment, like in any kind of activity.
But isn't there also a question of difference in repetition? You can say it's like you start with repetition and you say you want to create a new language, but out of the repetition you change it and try to. So
yeah.
It's not.
But the repetition is because every time it's it's for itself and for a different perspective. It's a different perspective. So it's different to see me like this, it's different to see me like this. So the repetition sometimes is also like, you know, because, you can see someone like doing this, like, but you don't see that it's like crack laughing. But then if you see like here, you start seeing faces and other expressions. You wouldn't necessarily just because of this laughing, because laughing sometimes doesn't really sound like laughing. So if you don't see it, also it's kind of.
My question is to which extent you construct or you compose affection? Because if I understood you right, you really work with different levels of affection. Also like addressing the viewers, but your own, let's say, perception of your body. And is it that you somehow compose it like from A to omega, from alpha to omega, or you break it also? Because my feeling was till now that you really construct and compose it like straightforward.
Straightforward, yeah.
Or my question would be if you're interested in breaking that, and if you do this, how you do it, or to which extent you construct the affection, and to which extent you leave it.
I have already made the tracks. I know sort of how this will be sounding, but I haven't done it yet. So because I have a certain understanding of this, I'm producing it while it's going on. But because of the limitation, because the human body is a certain instrument, it cannot do all of the sounds, and it cannot do all of the movements. This particular body, because also I'm not trained as a, I didn't want to be trained as a dancer, or like this is not, basically the quality of trying. It's also it's very important to me. Like the breaking is happening because of the impossibility of certain things to take place. Like doing the shooting and then being like, you do the shooting and then you like place yourself of like the person that is shot and then you fall down. The impossibility of, assuming that the viewer is at the same time looking at something, but it's also a recorder of something. It's like a sort of a strange camera where it's receiving like these affects, and then it's composing also in his head like certain things. So maybe for me, like to do this thing and place myself there, for you maybe it's like, where is this going? Is this going to a counter? Like on the back of a counter? Like, you know what I mean? It's not clear. Maybe for me to do this is just to make it even more, to underline that now I'm the one that is going to be shot, But maybe you think, she's going back on the counter, like to like check like things, like stuff like that, like the references of everyone, they're different. And this makes a difference on the repetition, much more than the repetition itself, like what I'm doing. The difference is happening on the cognito of everyone that is looking. I'm just like trying to do my own kind of also perception, assuming that I know, like, probably you think that I'm going to a counter. Okay, I'm going to do that. This is the breaking. The breaking is that I'm also kind of playing with this. That I like to play with that. That while this going on, while I'm trying to do this shooting scene, this other person is thinking that she's going to counter. You know. And I don't have a problem to do the reference, to bring this up too. Because it exists. It's another story going to someone else's mind. It's fine.
And do you rehearse?
Yeah, rehearse. I do certain. I have some kind of routines, but there are routines that they have nothing to do with the particular pieces. It's more time-based stuff. It's like exercises. That it has to do with repetition and like I don't rehearse performance. I look at things and I copy things, either from images or videos or from around. And I have certain routines that I do when I have time and when I'm able to actually be on my own and, concentrate. And it has to do with repetition and it has to do with timing. For example, because you're asking rehearsal. For example, that I would do I will do like certain movements, and I will try to be more closer to the detail of the movement. So I will do that. And then I will see something and then I will try to imitate it. And then look at it. Stuff like very simple things, not something very, I don't record the rehearsals. I don't, also sometimes I'm not, in the 7-hour performances, I don't really record all of the time of the performance. And when I sometimes I redo some of the pieces, I'm not trying to imitate those performances again. I don't have that fixation. I mean, the score maintains to be the same, but it cannot be the execution of the performance cannot be the same, of course.
Because of this instant now.
Yeah. And also because there is no space for listening if you are fixated with a particular, thinking, I did it this way that time, so I have to do this again. Because this is more on a very particular terrain, which has to do with representation, performing arts. And I'm not. I don't think that I'm dealing with performing arts here. I'm a visual artist, by the way. Just to remind you. Yeah, that's very important.
I have a question. How much does, because you're saying that you work a lot with the current moment is very important, so how much does the room and the people in the room and their reaction and their energies flowing also in the room somehow, how much do they influence sometimes maybe? I mean, does it happen that sometimes it's harder to evoke a certain feeling because you think that somehow the room is not right or the people or something? Or do you think that wherever you are, with whomever you you still can evoke this embodiment of the sensation, or does it influence you?
Mm.
That might be a question.
The work is not a therapy session. It's a piece. So what it's supposed to be doing is going to be doing it. It's not a therapy for me, and it's not the therapy for the viewers. It's the piece. It's the work. So because it's this piece, the affectivities is the material, but it's not to evoke that for the sake of the others and for me, and like, you know, you understand what I'm trying to say here? That is, you know,
Yeah, but I meant
that the difference between a Mozart piece and a Beethoven piece is not that Beethoven wanted to evoke a certain sentiment to someone in some point, you know, at that time, whatever. It was a decision making of harmonics, and putting the notes together that made to sound like this, these melodies. That's how we understand that this is Beethoven and this is Mozart. How we listen to Mozart has some effect to us. But when the piece is created, Mozart wouldn't know that still, like, people in 2016 will hear his pieces. Meaning, you understand? With the performance, because it's in the presence, you execute the piece. It's just that the piece is happening at that time, in the presence of also the audience. So I'm not doing a certain movement to please someone or to make someone feel uncomfortable or to feel someone feel more comfortable, or it's not that the point. Oh. No, for sure no. It's not provocation for the provocation's sake. Oh, you're so tired. Oh. What happened?
do you want to tell something about what you're doing for the manifesto, or is that like
Oh.
top secret?
I cannot say now this. It's so deep. It was so exhausting. So I want to just, like, you know, be happy for being here and, you know, being around beautiful faces. That's it.
But are there other questions from the audience, from people?
I mean, this was like a pigment of the work, you know, and of course, you know.
I mean, you do so many things also apart from your work, or as a part of your work, but apart from your work, like the project space in Athens,
The
and your
magazine.
involvement in occupying in New
Yeah.
York and things like that. Maybe this is also another aspect of your activities, which maybe be of interest. I don't know. But if you're tired, we can.
No,
call
I
it
mean for
a
you,
day.
I don't know. I mean, I'm totally fine. I'm gonna drink water.
Do you want to? I don't know if there's still something.
Yeah, and also, you know, you know, it's I can, you know, I can relax. Yeah, like just relax. You don't need to be so strict to schedule.
And this concept of like the edge of the city, you haven't really touched upon it, or
Yeah, the electricity. Yeah, basically this was more kind of a sense or like a feeling that I was saying also regarding that there is no end and there is no beginning in a way, that it's just a fragment of, you know, of like a moment. And some of the performances looked at, you know, they could be connected with other pieces and it would make sense, you know, they could be like a continuum. Yeah, I was thinking of this at the edge of the city because there are a lot of stories about Diogenes, who is like the main figure of the School of Cynics. That he was living on the edge, on the wall of the city. That city that was Athens at that time, in ancient times. And that was always sort of something that I found very, very funny, because you have this kind of school which is peripathic, which is like walking school, and then when you are kind of like more in one place, they decided to sit on the edge of the city. So it's not exactly outside and it's not exactly inside, but it's a priori inside and a priori outside. So when you are kind of the edge, you don't need to be deciding on the dualities of inside or outside, but you can be actually at the same time inside and outside.
but that kind of puts you in almost kind of like a power position, because you're like able to observe both entities, like both inside and outside.
No, it's not so much about the power, it's more about trying to...
Not power in a negative sense, like more like an empowerment somehow.
Yeah, more like a sense of, you know, that it's the figuration, or it's this balance between not falling too much on the inside and not falling too much on the outside. That is the philosophical, let's say, stream of the school. It is at the edge.
Is it the same as the interstice, like the in-between?
Yeah. But it's not in between, it's
Exactly.
at the edge.
Yeah.
So it's at the edge of outside and at the edge of inside, at the edge of the city.
But would the school of things like allow to fall? Like, does it allow to sometimes have the slippage, like you can slip into the inside?
Yeah,
and
but
slip into the outside, and you
but
always come back to the
yeah, but you're totally provoked by everyone in the school.
If you do that, does that happen?
Yeah, I mean there were many cases that there are many cases that you falling into this kind of sense of safety, of being inside and being like sort of like martyr of the outside.
What's this?
You will be like sort of moved if from the other students if you were doing this. So and it's a huge misunderstanding, because in the Western tradition, in the Western philosophical tradition, that is way after, like from the 17th century, 18th century, you have this perception that the cynics are the ones that are it's like it becomes like a negative understanding of what is a cynic. And I think that there are reasons that this have happened, because for the Western tradition and through the Enlightenment, the understanding of enlightenment, the understanding of truth, comes from the revealing of things. But there are already things that are revealed to us. With the cynics, because there is no such thing as revealing truth, but is doing truth. That's why Foucault also talks about the cynics when he's talking about paresia. He's using this example of the cynics to talk about paresia. He's doing it in the sense, he also talks about it in a way that this is happening because it's something else to know the truth to be revealed, than doing the truth. To speak, but to do. But because Foucault talks about this, talks about the cynics when he talks about speaking the truth with the paresia. But again, there is a lot of so the cynics actually are not the ones that are revealing or mocking or need. There are the ones that are uncomfortable or questioning the true tendencies of someone, or like if it's clear what they are the intentions of someone, if they are genuine. It's not that. It's not that at all. It's totally unclear. This is a misunderstanding. The school of cynics is the doing of truth. The school, as is represented by the Western philosophical tradition, is the huge misunderstanding of that part of the school, which was also the most provocative and revealing, not truth through revealing, through policing basically, but through doing. So this is where the misunderstanding happened. There, like when like certain texts were written from like first like translations of like philosophical texts, from Germany, from French philosophers, from translators. It has been a huge misunderstanding. So or maybe it was purposely like that. Because all the Western tradition is based on a very particular philosophical stream, which is the metaphysics. And the metaphysics are doing a very particular thing in the way of the thinking process, which is from the part of the being. The being is the reveal of how things are, like the cognito. But there were other schools, but they were not so human-centric. And this is what we try to do here. This is what I try to do.
To also include the non-human.
Yeah, but actually to not
make the dualistic distinction.
Yeah, and also to not think that basically because there is this huge philosophical tradition that allowed every one of us to think that we think, and we think through mind, that this is the only way. No, this is not the only way. Certainly is not the only way. there's continental and there is logic and there is also sophism and there is also cynics, there are also stoics. There are many different schools that they've given different ways of understanding, knowing, thinking, feeling, and forms of life. How we understand forms of life, because we are also part of this form of life. So this is very important to me. But I'm really forcefully trying to get out of this this tradition of metaphysics. It's not really.
But it's like really tricky because like everything is like embedded in that.
Yeah, exactly. So let's embed it.
Yeah, please.
I mean, this is what I try to do. You know.
But like before you were talking about like the making of reality, and now you're talking about like the making of truth, and I wonder like if you
Doing, not
sorry,
making.
the doing of so what is the difference between the doing of truth and the making of reality in your performances or connected to the school as well?
I guess when you know, like a very simple example, when you are doing crying, when you cry, it's not really simple path to cry. Like, you know what I mean? You start doing the crying, but still you are in a premise of the lie. You know what I mean? You start crying, but you don't yet know exactly why you cry.
Exactly.
But you cry. So you start crying, and you cry. And when you start feeling your tears on your cheek, now slowly you realize that you are crying. And then you go in doing the truth of the crying, because the tears are not yours or your cheeks. This is the doing of truth. It's not even happening from you. It's happening from the chemics of your organism. It's not from your mind. You know? So this is the doing of truth. Like you also on the making of the piece, I'm not going to talk about like general philosophical thing. Just on the how you make the piece, how I make the work. It's like from the tears then is the doing of the crying. Because the organism is creating this. There are certain ways that you can do this. When you do the tricks to cry, you're still on the lie. When you start feeling your tears, you're doing the cry. You're doing the true cry, because these are tears. It's not.
But is crying only if you have tears?
No, but I'm just saying, example. I'm giving an example so we understand the difference between, like the doing of truth is not I'm doing something true. You need to start from somewhere. You need at least to consider that there is some kind of thing that is a cry. And then you're doing. And then while you're doing, there is a moment of truth. But it's not something that is like truth. It's not like everything is truth. Truth everywhere. It's not like this. Because you're like figuring out. problem of metaphysics. Because you think that truth everywhere. And then when there is some kind of error, kill, punch, you know. Yeah. When there is a mistake, fear, you know. But if you actually realize that everything is error, everything is chaos, everything is uncontrolled, I have in the back of my mind that I can, you know, I feel something. I might cry. I'm crying. Shh. Truth. This is the doing of the truth. Then for the making of reality, if these sort of things that they are kind of small pieces of doing of truth are struggling for this truth, then there is a making of reality. That includes all of this, that they are not cheated, smashed, because they are kind of uncontrolled. Or they're revealing that they're coming from uncontrolled. From chaos, you can make something. You cannot make from everything is correct. This is the making of reality. We need to feel relaxed a little bit, that we cannot control anything. Anything. Really, we cannot. But we can do a little bit of, we can walk. We can go there and we can go there. And we can make small decisions. But at the same time, with this understanding, there is no truth. It's not like truth. It's lie. Cry. I feel something. I feel my face. I feel more kind of that I am here now, a bit more. I feel my sentiments. I kind of start understanding certain things.
So truth is like biological.
No, truth is not biological. Truth is many different things. But it's not cognition and only like the thinking that is producing truth. Production of truth is not, the production of truth is not coming from thinking. It would be insane.
But is it not, I don't know, but in normal life, we also have not always the same intensity of feelings, but sometimes there are these really clear moments of that we're so sure that we know what it's right now. They're really spare, not very often. But I understand it a little bit like this, that it's like a surge, not a surge, it's like trying or going to there and then.
Yes, but I'm not giving a talk right now for self-improvement. I'm giving a talk for my work.
Yeah, I understand.
It's very particular. What I'm doing right now is like I'm explaining my process. This is a very specific way of
I understand.
making of an atmosphere for me actually to be able to do this work. Because if there was only for the parameters of imitation and representation, it wouldn't make any sense for me to do this. It would bore me.
Yes.
This is what I'm trying to say. What I'm doing on my everyday life is my everyday life. But this is
your work.
This is what I'm doing in my work. This is what I'm trying to do with my work. This kind of clearness, let's say, the way you said, but I don't know if it's clear also. It's like I'm just explaining my mental conditions, like philosophical also stream, and my working process. This is my working process. And I'm really giving this parameter so I can explain also where I find that I may differentiate from like metaphysics,
Yes.
and where I'm differentiated from tradition of performing arts, which is very important to me to say on a talk that I'm presenting my work, because otherwise there are many misunderstandings.
No, actually,
you know, that's, you know,